What is up, y'all? And welcome back to the good old Angry Nation podcast. It's me, the favorite angry American, with our second favorite American, Sue LaRue. How you doing, Sue? Actually, Sue's an American treasure, and I'm not. Sue's a treasure, though. Let's bury him.
Well, more of a mood ring. I don't know about a treasure, but
mood ring. So if I slide you on my finger, you gonna change colors?
No, I just want to give a big shout out. It's June 5th. Big shout out to the rest of the tactical rifleman crew. They're over in Normandy, France right now. Going to get a jump out of a C-47 dressed up as World War II paratroopers. Like 80 years ago, we had the 82nd Airborne and the 101st sitting in hangars and getting their parachutes all prepared for the invasion of Normandy. So big anniversary tomorrow for all them.
We got Carl, Emery, and Nick jumping, right? Nick's jumping.
And Carl, Emery, Nick are jumping, and then the Black Daggers. I was supposed to be on their crew. They actually got defunded by the United States Army Special Operations Command. Great recruiting tool and everything. So the OIC, Chris Wilkerson, and I were still going to jump with the Red Devils from the British. And of course, I had neurosurgery last August, and I'm not allowed to skydive anymore. And Chris Wilkerson was trimming trees and great skydiver, and fell out of a tree and broke both shoulders and a bunch of ribs and everything. So he's medicaled out too. So we're missing him.
Well, you're with them in spirit, I know, man.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yep.
Well, tonight, guys, we're missing Emery because, as Sue just said, he's in Normandy, preparing to invade France. It'll probably never be the same again. And T is prepping for Blade Show, guys. So if you're in Atlanta, if you're coming to Blade, be sure to stop by the Gahagan Customs booth, where we're going to be doing the reveal on the production Daltons. They are coming. I will be putting up a pre-order for those shortly after Blade Show. And so those will be a normal, regular running in stock thing. And we've got some other ones we're going to come out with too. So, but that's enough for us tonight. Tonight, we have on with you some friends of mine that have been friends of mine for a long time. We've been tripping over each other's shows for years and years now. Doc Joe and Nurse Amy. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
We're doing great, Chris, and thank you so much for having us. It's an honor.
Absolutely. No, and we should have done this sooner, Should have had you guys here sooner.
I didn't.
He said we should have been here sooner.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
We're breaking up. I'm having connectivity issues. Let me know because I'm trying to move my thing around to get a better shot. I'm testing, so always testing.
No worries.
No
it's
problem.
Okay.
No problem. Can you hear me okay now?
Oh, yeah, you guys are coming through great on my end. Sometimes it's just me coming out that's a little rough. But
all right.
But no, I'm glad you guys are here. So it's we attended your last show together, I guess. You guys are coming off the road. You're not going to do the festivals anymore?
Well, we are. It just depends a little bit on
timing. I think it's timing. And where we are, because we typically go to Tennessee, North Carolina area in the spring, and then we go back. We've been going a little later because it's been getting cooler later. So we've been going like third week of October. And I know there's a self-reliance festival, I think it's called, at the beginning of October. That, I don't know, you're going to, I believe.
I went to it last year. Yeah. I went to and it was great. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're talking to her. The problem is, the 14-hour drive, it's 3 weeks earlier than we usually go. So I don't know. Patty, no, don't bark. Oh, boy, here we go. So anyway, but there is another one of the shows we just did in late October. So we're going to go. Come on, baby.
Plus, we also oftentimes do a day-long medical class in Kodak, Tennessee, which is relatively close to where we are. So, we'll be doing, suture classes, and we'll be doing them. Also, we've gotten a lot of demand for it down here in our home state of Florida. So we'll be doing a lot of teaching, and we'll be around. I'm beginning to have some health issues. I turned 70 just recently, so it's one of those things. So as long as I'm
the list gets longer. The older
we
get, the list gets longer.
Yeah,
but you know what?
I'm old, but I'm not frail.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. As Sue, as we all know, sitting here, the check engine light comes on at 50, and you better start paying attention and taking care of. Like I've got L1 has got multiple fractures. I just found out, and compressed. S1 multiple fractures and compressed, along with spinal stenosis on the left side. So fun stuff. All those years of doing hard work and all the crap that I've done all my life, it's all catching up, and it feels like it's all catching up right now. So
I know what's with it. I don't know how old you are. I think we might be similar
51
in age, but
51.
Okay, well I'm much older than you. I am.
I wouldn't have guessed. I didn't. I really thought you and I were around the same age.
Literally next year. I mean, my birthday hasn't happened this year, but next year I will be 60. It's insane. Really? Yeah, wow. But
it's all smoke and mirrors.
After we left the show, I could barely walk for like 5 weeks before and after the show. But I had a CT scan, and every single one of my lumbars, all of them, from L1 to L6, are all bulging. Every single one of them. So I feel your pain. Believe me.
Oh yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah. And Sue, you don't know nothing about back pain. He's lived a soft life.
Yeah.
No,
I highly doubt that.
No.
in his military career.
Nope.
He looks like he's in great shape.
Well, I was lucky. I got 100%, mostly on 100% medical from the VA, mostly because of spinal injuries and things like that. But I just did a neurosurgery last August for I had a bleeder up there, an aneurysm, and so I had actually get 2 holes drilled in my head. So if I tell everybody that's what we're going to do for marketing next year is either Tactical Rifleman or Angry American. We're gonna take that CT scan and we're gonna superimpose it on bowling balls. So if you put your thumb in my ear hole, you can roll my skull down the alley and knock over the pins.
Still, can I ask you
it'll
how
be
old
great.
you are?
But I'm just a little bit older. I'm 61. I turned 61 in August, and I was very healthy. I was skydiving, scuba diving, playing ice hockey and everything. But there's the neurosurgeon says once the air hits your brain, you're never the same. So that put me down for a few months, and then I had a rare fungus called valley fever before that. And so I was in and out of the hospital for almost a year. And I think like Nurse Amy was saying, that once it catches up to you and you're bedridden for so long, it just seems like it takes. It's taken me months to get my strength back.
Yeah.
Ever spent time in the Southwest?
Yeah.
Like
Arizona, I was raised out there. Yeah. Valley fevers that's where I got valley fever, right in the Phoenix Valley, shooting machine guns out there.
Yeah.
Of course, Carl and Emery were with me, but it sucks to be me. So I'm the one that caught it. They didn't.
Join the club, man.
This is the kind of medical stuff that people don't prepare for, like the debilitating, degenerative stuff, and then the injuries to even mechanicals. And I've always said for years, no one has enough wound treatment supplies on hand. Burns, lacerations, abrasions, whatever. We're not even getting into the more exotic things that everybody thinks they're preparing for with their IFAKs. But let's talk about doom and gloom for a minute. Let's talk about what you guys are doing with some great books and some great products. You guys have been doing the event circuit forever, setting up at expos, giving classes, and selling products. But let's tell everybody where they can find you guys and like what's on the horizon for doom and gloom, where you guys are going. And then I want to get into some of the more detailed aspects. And for everybody listening, guys, use hashtag doom and bloom in the comments for questions directly for Joe and Amy. which we'll get to later. You know, we'll have a Q&A at the end for you guys too here. So right out of the comment section.
Yeah,
So
during mountain readiness, I was Charlie and I were doing the tactical rifleman class, and we were kind of imposing on the doctor and nurse Amy there during one of their seminars, and just we bowed out, and I eavesdropped on it for a little while, and I was just like, I'm so glad you guys are on tonight, because we have a 7-point plan for a self-reliant community and everything, and that's something I think people don't understand, is how important medical is, because there is things go bad, whether natural, man-made disaster. Medical is going to be a huge issue, and you really got to think about not only preparing for it, but learning the talents to take care of each other right now before the bad happens. So with no further ado, I'll let you guys take over.
Well, I guess maybe not everybody knows who we are, so I'll tell you who we are. I am actually an actual doctor, an actively licensed doctor. I'm started off my practice as a obstetrician, and then ended up, as time goes on, as a pelvic surgeon. If you're a good obstetrician, your patients get old with you, and they start having things that are maybe not so happy, and you wind up doing a lot of surgery towards the end. Amy is a certified nurse midwife and an advanced practice registered nurse, or a nurse practitioner. And we've been doing this medical preparedness. Yeah, since about 2009.
Yeah.
I first wrote you might know me, if you've ever heard of fish antibiotics, you might know me from that. I was the first doctor to actually write about fish antibiotics and recommend that people get them in their supplies. I still feel that that's what people should do. It was great to have those around, because they were without a prescription. You can buy as many as you wanted. But just last December, the FDA actually came out with a letter of warning to Chewy.com and ValleyVet.com and a lot of the
handful of others,
a lot of other distributors.
They were like a bottling company. So what they would do is they would take the human antibiotics, buy them in bulk, and then they would rebottle them. Can I have that bottle right there? It's behind. Nope. One more. There you go. And they would just slap the label on and fill them up with this one's sealed. Fill them up with human antibiotics and then sell them. And then suddenly, they get a letter.
And the letter said that they didn't know that the government didn't know of the existence of these products, even though they have been around for more than 30 years.
Right, 50 years, 60 years.
So the FDA said, well, these are new animal drugs, despite their being around for 30 years.
Yeah.
And they said that using them outside of the direct supervision of a doctor or a veterinarian contributes to the development of antibiotic resistance. That's true, which occurs when microbes like bacteria become resistant to the drugs designed to kill them. And so I can't deny the statement's true. I mean, antibiotics aren't candy, and injudicious use is bad and leads to that. However, I had always recommended that these medicines, which were widely available, I always recommended that you need to have them if you are worried about a long-term disaster event occurring. And, and it hasn't happened yet, despite all the nation's problems. It hasn't happened yet. But if such an event occurred and the family medicine had some of these stored away, they might have been able to prevent some of the unnecessary deaths that occur in these kinds of scenarios by eliminating bacterial infections and nipping them in the bud. And with the new FDA warning, that's no longer an option. And that's sort of how we started. We actually watched a History Channel special back in 2009 called After Armageddon. I don't know if anybody has seen that.
Oh, yeah.
And in After Armageddon, that a paramedic is the head of a family that is escaping some massive disaster. They wind up in a community, and they use him as partly for medical, but they also make him do other things too, like farming, I think.
Yes.
He injured himself. He wound up getting a cut on his, I think his leg or his arm, and it got infected. And he saw that the redness was spreading, that it was getting warmer, and he went to the medic for the community, and they had absolutely no antibiotics. And so here is this trained medical person looking at himself every day, getting more and more sick, and until it hit his bloodstream and it killed him. And so he said, if people could only have access to antibiotics, well, that would have been great, because that would have saved this person's life, and that family wouldn't have lost its father. Now, we had the reason why we got involved with fish antibiotics is that we raise fish. We raise tilapia. We've raised tilapia in ponds. We raise tropical fish also, and we have a bird, as I showed Russ and Sue just before the show, and so whenever our birds or our fish got fin rot, let's say that's a bacterial infection of fish, we would give them this product called Fish Mox. And then when a human patient of ours got an infection, we might have given them amoxicillin.
Right.
Well, one day we looked at this Fish Mox, and there was only one antibiotic, one ingredient, the antibiotic itself, was only made in human dosages, which was pretty weird. Why would my guppy need an 180-pound adult male's dose of amoxicillin? And then we opened up the human amoxicillin bottle and the Fish Mox bottle. It was a red and pink capsule with the numbers and letters WC731 on it. That was the human one.
Same.
And the fish one was a red and pink capsule with the numbers and letters WC731 on it. When we found at least a dozen antibiotics that were like this, everything, sulfa drugs, tetracycline, clindamycin, zithromycin, doxycycline, all sorts of antibiotics. And so it used to be that if you were the medic for a survival group, you could get 500 of these if you wanted, because there was no limitation on what you can buy. Now, what you have are a number of human companies that, for if you apply and fill out an application, they'll give you what they call an antibiotic pack, but they'll only do it once a year, and they only give you one course of antibiotics for whatever antibiotics they sell you. And that's a problem because, let's face it, you may think that you're going to be taking care of, like, your wife and maybe your one child or two children and maybe your grandma. But the truth is, you're probably going to wind up taking care of, if you're the medic, you're probably going to wind up taking care of 20 people. Right. And so that is bad news, because you just don't have enough to last you. They'll be dispensed very, very quickly if something really happens.
Yeah, it'll go quick. The antibiotics are certainly an issue. And what do you recommend people to try to do now? I mean, now that they've closed that door, and that's on all veterinary drugs. It's not just on Fish Mox, right? It's all veterinary drugs now need to have a prescription from a veterinarian to be able to purchase them.
Right. Well, one thing that you can do is, of course, you can go through these human antibiotic places and get some antibiotics, and certainly not enough to be useful in a true grid down situation. But people are going now to Indian pharmacies. And so there's India Mart, there's I think allindiapharmacy.com. I'll have to look. I'll find the actual URL and post it. But you can get them from these people. The thing is that you don't know exactly what you're getting because they're not made in the United States, and it takes usually 3 to 4 weeks to get them. But they are probably antibiotics. I just don't have any experience with them. Just as right.
Yeah, we personally didn't have any situation where we needed to, because while the fish antibiotics were available, we were buying drawers full. I have thousands I mean, I can take care of our community.
Yeah.
So and just randomly sitting around here, just 100 capsules. So
right, our mission, our mission, if you don't know, is basically to put a medically prepared a person in every family. And so basically, what we did is, we basically tried to make it so that everyone has the ability to put together not just IFACs, but put together bigger amounts of medical supplies so that they can actually put together a field hospital if they need to. And, that's basically what we've done ourselves. We actually have a business in which we produce an entire line of quality medical kits. And, so for us, we always have that pretty much thousands of whatever we need. And we've included antibiotics in that, although we no longer sell them.
We've never sold them.
Right. Yeah.
I've never sold them. We've talked about them. The only ad I had ever actually put on my website was somebody that we knew that we had purchased from, and that we knew that he had good customer service. He was responsive if people had questions. And we got samples from him to make sure that what he was selling and providing were actually human antibiotics. So that was Fishmox Fish Flex. Unfortunately, he was also affected in December, and whatever stock he had, he sold out, I believe, in late January. He finally has, emptied out. Now, our hope is, in this letter that we're talking about that was provided, everyone can see it. I believe you posted it on our website in an article in December about, what's going to happen to fish antibiotics. But in the letter, the FDA, surprisingly, actually offered the option for these companies who were rebottling human antibiotics into fish antibiotics to make an application. And they actually said they have a speedy process for applying and approving these antibiotics, new antibiotics. So I'm hoping that one of these companies was smart enough, because they may be the only one to do this, have made the application, because these are already approved antibiotics. These are amoxicillin, penicillin, metronidazole, diflucan. These are medicines that have been out in the market for 50, 60, 70 years. They're not new. So there's no testing that needs to be done. They just need to say, okay, we're using this medicine. We're going to call it this on the label, and this is what's in it. I don't know if they need to provide a sample or whatever, but they said they would hurry the process. So I'm hoping that we're going to hear eventually that one of these bottling companies was smart enough to go ahead and follow the suggested remedy, which the FDA provided in the second part of the letter, saying, hey, if you do this, we can probably approve you pretty quickly.
I'm sure it's profitable, but I doubt greatly that the FDA is going to approve people being able to get antibiotics.
Well, yeah, but they're not going to say people are going to buy them. It's for the hobby, the fish. We were just at a fish club, 4 weeks ago, judging fish. There, hundreds of people there, and their livelihood, their hobbies are fish. And all these people, cannot get antibiotics anymore because of what has happened. And it was really sad. We didn't talk to anybody about it.
And try to get your veterinarian to examine
your guppy or your guppy. But all these people, hundreds of people who just love their fish. In fact, the highest sold fish there was a $450 fish. What if that fish gets sick? He's got nothing. That's
expensive sushi. I'm just saying, that's expensive sushi.
Yeah. He's not eating it.
It's crazy, man.
They love their fish. Everyone's very.
Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Where they were talking about making it where veterinary medicines had to have a prescription from a vet to even get them?
Yes, but before that was only for food producing livestock.
Right.
And that's still
your
still
chickens
the case.
And your cows.
That's still the case.
Right.
It's only in December that they decided to include the antibiotics that I've been writing about all these years,
which are for hobbies. This is a hobby, fish hobby. These people are not selling their fish to be eaten.
Right.
They love their fish. I personally have 7 tanks of fish in my house, and a shrimp tank, a dwarf shrimp tank, and a pond. I mean, we love our fish. They're enjoyable.
You can get a vet to look at a horse. You can get a vet to look at a cow, but you can't get a vet to look at a goldfish.
Yeah.
So that's the sad part of it. But the sadder part of it, from a preparedness standpoint, is that the group medic now only has a certain amount of antibiotics that he or she is going to have available to him, and that is going to be dispensed very quickly if something really, really happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what do you think brought this
Ed
on?
Orr here, he's a buddy of mine.
What my theory is, Sue? I have a theory. I have a theory that the companies that have started selling human antibiotics in kits to people, like we were talking about, like you get, 14 metronidazole and 28 ampicillin and 28 amoxicillin and by the way, you can only buy that once a year. I believe, because I know at least 2 of the companies contacted us. They know all about us. They know all about our books. They know all about fish antibiotics. And anytime anyone ever asked them about fish antibiotics, they were poo. That's terrible. That's awful. They're not human. They're bad for you. Whatever. They just did not want that.
Yeah, and we recently saw this during COVID with ivermectin, which is supposedly a horse dewormer, but it's been used for human. It's been used for human consumption for years, and nobody ever mentioned that during COVID.
Right?
They were just saying, "Oh, look at these guys. They're using horse dewormer, for God's sakes. They're animals," and they made a big joke out of it.
Well, I'll tell you,
100% right.
Last weekend, I was taking ivermectin myself because I was coming down with something, and I managed to head it off at the pass by taking ivermectin.
Yep.
So,
you had like a couple hours of fever, a little bit of a cough. He got better so much faster than I expected.
I'm a member of the Frontline COVID Critical Care Alliance front, and that's a group of doctors that basically are for hydroxychloroquine or for ivermectin, and we give people, the alternative ways that you can deal with these issues without, especially, I guess, to help deal with people that have not had vaccinations and stuff like that. We actually, Amy took the vaccination and it almost killed her.
Yeah, no.
I got that thrombocytopenia.
I wasn't taking any of that stuff.
I almost died. I only did it because I wanted to protect him.
Yeah, I was just like, reading what they were doing and what they were talking about and how fast. There was no testing. They can say
it was horrible. I got the one that they took off the market, the Johnson & Johnson.
Johnson's off the market. Yeah. Who else just pulled theirs? Somebody else just pulled theirs.
Well, that was pulled very early, and it was pulled because of people like me who had a swollen heart, swollen brain, couldn't breathe, fibromyalgia. I mean, I nearly died. I know I was having brain clots, and I refused to go into the hospital because I told them at the door, I said, I'm having a vaccine side effect, and they just laughed in my face.
And what happened?
And I knew that they were going to kill me if I went in there. They were going to do something terrible.
They're going to intubate you and
intubate me, and then call him and say, we don't know what happened. She died last night, and not let him in.
And even though I'm a doctor, they wouldn't let me in. So I would not be able to serve as a patient advocate.
I was like, I'm not going in. You're not going to kill me.
Right. And everybody needs a patient advocate.
Yeah. I refused to go. I wasn't going to do it.
So, but you guys have worked together on a 700-page book. I'm reading here, and tell us about this book, because I wish I had that book 20 years ago when I was going and living with the Kurds or going to Somalia and things like that. And the number one thing that I saw in all these refugee camps, or we're trying to put military units together and everything, is just the unsanitary conditions and how quickly cholera and dysentery get everybody sick. everybody, or we have dead bodies. How do we get rid of, whether they're babies or old men or how do we sanitarily, is that a word? I don't know, but how do we keep from getting everybody sick? And I think this is something that all preppers and all survivalists need to know, that most people, just like the Civil War, most people didn't die by lead shot. They died by,
dysentery.
Microbes killed more people in the Civil War than lead or cannonballs.
You're absolutely
100% right.
Absolutely right, and that is basically the reason why we wrote this book. There are a lot of great books on first aid. There are a lot of very good books on first aid, even for wilderness settings, and so many of them are excellent books, but they fail to take into account that in a true survival scenario, there really is no access to modern medicine for the foreseeable future.
All those books, they're all predicated on the idea that a higher level of care exists.
Right.
And it ends at
prepping for a world where that won't exist. So that's the threshold we're looking for, which is what you guys do. And it's nice to see it being done.
That's the thing. Those books, even books like Where There Is No Doctor, will end each chapter with, and get to a hospital and seek a qualified medical professional.
Yep.
But in real terms, there is no such thing that exists when the medical infrastructure is collapsed. And so our entire book, the Survival Medicine Handbook, assumes that some disaster has happened. You no longer have the option of accessing modern medical care, maybe for the long run. And it addresses the average citizen in plain English as if they were the last line of defense when it comes to their family's well-being in times of trouble. That we assume that they are now the highest medical asset left.
Yep.
And we aim to make them effective in that role. And nowhere between the front page here of this book and the back page of this book are you going to say, you see the words, go to the hospital or go to the doctor, because the entire book assumes they no longer exist.
Right.
Yep. So, I'm sure I've got a train of thought. It'll come to me in a second. Go ahead.
You asked a question.
I got it now. It came back to me. Do you address in this one, like alternative hydration methods using, say, off the shelf or OTC supplemental equipment? You guys like fish?
Yes,
you got aquariums, so you probably got bubble tube and all kinds of things laying around there and ways to improvise hydration, be it enema or whatever. Do you go into that? Because a lot of people don't want to talk about those things.
Yes, I made an awesome graphic for the rectal rehydration,
how to set
which
up
is
rectal
the
rehydration.
safest way to do rehydration. All these people who are talking about, I'm going to sterilize normal saline, and then I'm going to get a tube, and then I'm going to get a needle. I'm like, no, do not. You can never sterilize it enough to inject something directly into someone's bloodstream. It doesn't take much bacteria to cause direct septicemia, infection of the blood, and then whatever you were trying to help, you just made it so much worse. But doing the rectal rehydration is so much safer. Now you can't do nutrition, so you can't put Ensure in there. You're not going to get that absorption, but you can get electrolytes. Go ahead and you can talk about it.
Electrolytes, you get fluids, are absorbed in the large intestine, and so if you can get that fluid into the large intestine through rectal rehydration, that works. Now, before IVs were commonplace, let's say during World War I or before then, basically this is basically how they got fluids into unconscious people, or people that were severely injured. And so we have an entire section on exactly how to put that kind of stuff together. Good. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about burial of bodies. Sue had mentioned that. And of course, you have to remember that human bodies are an issue, but most of the time, unless they have things like Ebola, the handling of a human body usually does not wind up causing you to become infected or become sick as a result of that.
I'm just going to show this picture.
People need to be buried.
This is that picture that I put together
of
exactly how to do this with tubing, simple enema tubing and an IV. But the bag can be just,
anything.
the cleanest water. I mean, boil the heck out of it, filter it, whatever you got to do to make it. If it's safe to drink, then it's safe to put in here.
It doesn't even have to be that terribly clean. I mean, I remember reading this. I mean, I know there's issues, but I remember reading an account of a family whose sailboat sunk, and it was a mother, father, and 2 kids, and the mother was a nurse, and she kept everybody in the lifeboat alive by forming a enema out of whatever she came up with, and using the rainwater and the turtle blood from the turtles they were killing and all the other stuff, and running it through the bag, and that's how she kept her kids alive, kept her and her husband alive through hydration. And it's not clean, but it's in the lower GI. It's already down in the large intestine.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about that.
So the H2O is going to be absorbed, and the rest is just going to run back out.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be sterile.
Right.
The small town that I was raised in, Del City, Texas, we were 90 miles from the nearest hospital, and I can think of a simple enema bag. One of my friends in high school got food poisoning, and given him that enema before we took him to El Paso. His mother gave him an enema, and it probably saved his life. I mean, that's just, you're exactly right. You got to get those people hydrated so they can have something to fight with. So their
Joe,
bodies need to fight the.
Could you run salt water? Sorry, sir, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. It's skipping a little bit for me. So
you shouldn't.
I didn't think so. The sodium would be too much.
You can run normal saline.
Right.
Which is 0.9, right?
Now you can
lower saline,
which equals the way the concentration of salt in the blood. But this is what you would need to do for that. What you need to do is get a pot with a lid. You need a liter of water. You need two teaspoons of salt, and you boil it for 15 minutes, and then you let it cool with the lid on. Then put it in a sterile canning jar with a sterile canning lid. Or either use it immediately, which it will be sterile,
after it cools off,
or if you do seal it with a sterile canning lid, it actually will keep for about a month. Actually,
really.
But once you open it up, obviously, then it becomes colonized with bacteria. So you got to use it right away when you do that. I want to go back to Sue.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's interesting you brought that up, because I addressed that burial in the book that Alan Kay and I did called Strategies for Surviving the Coming Unpleasantness, Decline and Decay. So let's go ahead and talk about burial, Joe. Let's bring that up.
All right. Well, I don't know if this will be different from what you've written, and certainly there are different ways. There's more than one way to bury a cat.
Yeah.
So a burial ground should be at least 200 to 250 meters, or about 600 feet or so, from any water that might possibly be used for the living. Proper disposal of dead bodies, doesn't have to cause major contamination of the environment, but you don't want it close to your actual water supply. A body should be placed in body bags. These are currently commercially available. You can find them almost anywhere. Many of them
on Amazon.
Yeah, many of them come with handles so that it helps with transport. If you don't have these, found items like bed sheets, plastic sheetings from abandoned homes, these would be options. And the current guidelines suggest a grave depth of 5 or 6 feet if you can, 1.5 meters, and preferably that amount of space above the water table if you can. Some places that's hard to do. Down here, water table's like 6 inches.
Oh yeah,
above. That's why you see around here. Everybody has a concrete vault.
In Florida too.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you dig a little hole, and
you could bury them up here. I live on the Central Florida Ridge, so I'm a whopping 90 feet above sea level.
Oh,
dang!
You're on a mountain.
You're on the
he's
mountain.
on the top of the mountain.
That's the Everest of Mount Florida.
I literally let's say the dog that we saw earlier, the Great Pyrenees. She just digs a little hole, and it just fills in with water.
We call that Lake Pyrenees. We have
Lake Pyrenees.
And our yard is called the Land of 1,000 Lakes.
So let me ask you a question, because when I wrote that book and I did a section on some basic medical things, my editor actually asked me. He didn't ask me. He's like, why aren't you suggesting cremation? That's the best way. And he went on his whole tirade. And I asked him a simple question. And I said to Mike, I said, how much wood does it take to cremate a human? Right. And he's like, I'm not sure. I said, somewhere in the neck of the woods between 1,200 to 1,500 kilos of wood.
Absolutely right.
Human. So
one human, imagine. That's all your
fire. Would that heat your home? How many gallons of water would that purify? Meals with that 1,500 kilos of wood cook that you got to go out and chop, process, and get everything done to have that fire? I mean, it's just not feasible.
No, not at all.
No,
it's absolutely a complete waste
of energy. Someone might hurt their back chopping wood. They might hurt themselves. You're subjected to injuries. I mean, there's
really an art to cremating somebody with wood, because you almost never get somebody completely cremated. No. Now, let me talk a little bit about quicklime, which I think people know about. Quicklime is calcium oxide, and that's been used in burials for centuries. But the funny thing is that a lot of people say that they use it to speed decomposition. Nope. But it doesn't. It actually preserves tissue. Yeah. So why would you use it? Why would you use it? Because it's helpful, because it helps, especially in disposal of human remains that can't receive a deep burial. These cases, quicklime eliminates odors that attracts flies and animals. And so that's one good reason to use quicklime. And the general formula is 1 kilogram or 2 pounds, 2.2 pounds per about 10 kilograms of body weight. So you have to use quite a bit of it. But the funny thing is that they killed 2 pigs, and they buried one with quicklime. They buried one without quicklime, and they found that the one with quicklime was actually pretty well preserved.
Well, if you notice in anytime you're seeing where a disaster, or after a massive disaster, say the Indonesian floods or things like in Haiti or that kind of stuff, where there's hundreds or in some cases thousands or tens of thousands of bodies, when they're doing quick burials, they use quicklime, like you just said, because it does preserve the body to a degree. It makes identification easier later and that kind of stuff. And so you'll see them using it in temporary burials too, because they know they're going to be digging these folks back up to then identify and reinter them. So that's one of the biggest uses for lime. And I think a lot of people see that on TV and they just think, oh, when you bury somebody, you have to do that. You don't have to. And like you said, it speeds up a little bit if you don't. But like you said, keeping the odor factor and all that, keeping animals from wanting to dig at it and bugs from getting to it. And
especially useful for shallow burials. Yeah. Otherwise, you wind up having basically the body dug up and scattered to the, all over the place by the animals.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good call, because most people don't think of that, of disposing of a body. Like somebody saw in the bed of my truck one day, and they're like, "What's that thing right there?" I said, "That's a body bag." And they're like, "What the hell do you have a body bag in your truck for?" And I was like, "Why don't you?"
Wait, was the body bag next to duct tape and some rope?
Yeah.
And a crowbar?
Yeah, and a rifle and an axe and a whole bunch of other shit laying around.
And a cinder block.
And a cinder block, right? With a chain.
He was on his way to marriage counseling.
Now, I did see
that was just the alternate plan from the counseling.
Well, Mel and I do not believe in divorce. We believe in disappearance.
Yes.
There is a truth to till death do you part. It's just, when is that going to be?
Or if they're not around no more, does it really matter any now?
Yeah.
But we're both still here, so that's
there you go. Awesome.
Now, listen, I saw a question about expiration dates. And so I want to spend a couple of seconds. I wrote around the same time as the fish antibiotic article, I wrote the article about expiration dates and the truth about that. Expiration dates didn't exist until 1979. And basically, an expiration date is the last day that the pharmaceutical company will guarantee 100% potency of the particular medicine that you're talking about. Now, that doesn't mean that 2 weeks afterwards, if you take it, that you're going to grow a horn in the middle of your forehead. You are not. And basically, the funny thing is that our Department of Defense actually was looking at this national medical stockpile that we have. We have a national medical stockpile. It has about 100 and something drugs that are used commonly in national disasters. And they would look at this pile of $50 million worth of, I don't know, amoxicillin or some other drug, or Tamiflu, things like that. And they see that it expired, and they would get the forklifts out and they throw away $50 million worth of Tamiflu. Well, even the government decided that might be a little wasteful. And so they did a study, and the study is called the Shelf Life Extension Program. And in the Shelf Life Extension Program, they tested 122 different medicines to identify whether they were still potent and safe to use after their expiration date. And they tested drugs that were between 2 and 10 years expired, and they found that almost all medicines that were in pill or capsule form were 100% potent and safe to use even 10 years afterwards.
Yep.
And the ones that were potent, that were considered to be safe and potent 2 years afterwards, were only actually expired 2 years at the time. So with regards to expired drugs, it's when normal times are around and you can get these fresh drugs easily, fine. But between you and me, I wouldn't throw away your expired drugs
if it's pill or capsule.
Right. Now that's you're
right. Moving on to wet goods right there, and then saying so EpiPens. Somebody's asking like, what should they do?
I'll tell you about EpiPens. Okay,
they actually have something about EpiPens.
I have
updated.
Right. They did a study on EpiPens that were up to 3 years expired, and they found that they were about 80% effective, or 80% potent. They do things that are in liquid state do lose potency faster, but EpiPen actually stayed about 80% potent after 3 years of being expired. And so much so that the company itself tells you to use the expired EpiPens if you don't have fresh ones.
Yeah.
You might have to use 2 EpiPens, more than just one dose, but you can use it. It is indeed actually the official recommendation of the company.
Oh, that's good. So let's talk about a couple of the antibiotics that can be a little bit of an issue as they start to degrade, like tetradoxy, even aspirin.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because the tetracycline, the classic one is tetracycline, that after 1 year expired, it's supposed to kill you, and the actual truth is, in the 1960s and 1970s, that was actually very true. In the 1980s, they changed out citric acid for some other ingredient. And since that time, there have been very few reports of
incidents,
but not kidney failures or liver failures as a result. Now, so the bottom line is probably safe to use. However, it's not one of my top 5 or 6 antibiotics, because it's a first generation antibiotic and there's a lot of resistance to it. So I would rather use doxycycline. You mentioned doxycycline.
Yeah.
Well, there was a huge military buy of doxycycline about 10 years ago, and it meant that there was no doxycycline hardly anywhere for the general public. And so the Department of Defense and the FDA went through the Shelf Life Extension Program, which exists to this day, and they issued what's called an emergency use authorization. And they said that you can use the expired doxycycline for 5 to 10 years after its expiration date.
Well, that's good to know. I didn't know that about doxy. Yeah. That's good. All right. Good.
Right. And so that was the story. Now they wouldn't go further than that. They wouldn't go further out than that. But I'll tell you, there's this crazy story about a San Francisco pharmacy or a San Diego pharmacy that had somebody had walled up a part of the store, and they had walled up some medicines, and they broke through and they found a bunch of medicines that were between 28 and 40 years expired. and they found 14 out of the 16 drugs were actually 100% potent or more than 100% potent because the other ingredients in it degraded, but the active ingredient didn't.
Right.
So now I'm not telling you to take medicines that are 40 years expired, but it's just sort of an interesting story.
So here's
this expired in 2013.
13? Yeah, let it run.
I would take this with no hesitation.
Yeah.
And we have taken it. It's not like it's not like we don't put our money where our mouth is.
No,
I know you guys do. And I'll tell everybody watching, like I said, I've known these guys because, like you said, you guys started this in like 2009. My first book came out in 2010, and I know we were on the forums together back then. So I trust these two people. I wouldn't have them on here if I didn't. I consider them friends of mine. So I'm, take what they say at value because they've done the research and Joni have done the work. So
yes, we have.
we got another question here. Susan's asking about natural antibiotic medicinal plants. If you guys have some favorites and what you think as far as tinctures, salve, oil infusion, poultice. I'll answer the second half of that if you guys are unaware of it because I know the one they're talking about. But what's your recommendations, or do you have any on the medicinal herbal front?
Yes, we have several sections. I just want to say we have several sections in the book that cover herbal medicines. And
I got to get the new one because my old copy, the one you guys had years ago, it burned in the office. Burned.
Are you and Sue? Send us an address. We'll get you one.
Oh, all right. I'll get a hold of you.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. So the thing that we have to realize about medicine, okay, is that if you honestly believe that something is going to happen and it's going to cause some kind of long-term situation that's going to throw us back medically to an earlier time, that whatever medicine you've put together, and I don't care if you put together 500 Advils and 500 amoxicillins, somewhere down the road, maybe years, but it might not be years, you're going to run out of those. So what that leaves you with is the natural products that our ancestors actually had to use, and what is considered herbalism today was conventional medicine back then. Mm-hmm. And I have, you can't see them, but I have right here, I have about 50 books from the 19th century on medicine. Yeah. And doesn't say herbal medicine, it's just medicine, but you open it up, it says, tincture of, tea tree and, all sorts of stuff.
This is one of my favorite ones. Show that to them.
So we have, this is
a doctor's book.
This was like the Merck manual.
This is what a doctor carried around.
1875. And so, it has pretty much just about everything. And a lot of things are in antiquated names or just the Latin name for it, but it tells you what to use for constipation, for diarrhea, for nausea, things like that. And so we fully believe in that. And that means that you absolutely have to know your herbs. From an antibiotic standpoint, garlic, I think, is the absolute best, and also that's as an herb. As another substance that has excellent antibiotic properties is honey. And in its raw unprocessed state, then it has excellent antibiotic properties as well.
Using it right now for that very thing. Right now in our house, we're using honey to treat a post-surgical procedure for my wife. Yeah, because conventional medicine has taken 5 months and things aren't where they want to be, where I want them to be, where she wants them to be. So we're presently treating with usnea and honey, but the usnea is in a castor oil, and then applied and held in place with a bandage for a while, and that's removed, and a dry bandage goes on, and that comes off, and honey goes on, and we're rotating around it a little bit.
Let me just. Go ahead. Is there an infection there? Is there a little infection? Because you may want to consider some diluted Dakin's solution. In fact, I know someone who has an open wound recently, like a pretty bad one that just would not heal and had like 3 different bacterias in it. Pretty nasty. She started using Dakin's, and then she would alternate the raw honey and then use Dakin's. And so that really, and the funny thing is we had told her about this, and then she went to the doctor and told them what she was doing, and they wrote a prescription. They actually gave her a prescription for Dakin's solution. So she ended up getting it from the pharmacy.
Even
honey,
even honey is now is being recognized by conventional sources, and it's you can find it under the brand name Medi Honey. And so I have to say that, I think everybody that is the medically responsible person for a family should have a medicinal garden, a medicinal herb garden. And it may seem like a lot. It's important to realize you're just going to have limited access to antibiotics if things go south, especially the longer things turn out bad. So whatever you have in the medicine cabinet is going to run out. And, the gardening learning curve, that is pretty steep. And you don't want to wind up learning how to grow medicinal herbs when you need them that day, and you're planting a seed.
It's the same thing like thinking you're going to learn to garden on game day to feed your family.
Oh my God!
Education and trial and error, and you can't buy that box from Amazon to plant a garden, just like you can't buy a box from Amazon with medical skills and knowledge. You can buy the products, but you can't buy the skills and knowledge. And that's why training with people like you guys is so invaluable. And we've got several questions. I'm trying to cram them in. So Amanda's asking.
I've got one real quick.
Go ahead, Sue. Go ahead. We'll save her.
In my experience in northern Iraq, Kurdistan, and Somalia, the special forces medics, the 18 Deltas, when we had acute amputations, a lot of wounded, and a lot of people having accidents, the blood transfusions were incredible. I mean, we'd all get in line and we'd actually donate blood, to help refugees or help our fellow comrades, be it Iraqi or Somali or whatever. But do you guys cover that in your book at all? Or that's got to be very, very touch and go type stuff.
Spend a lot of,
like Amy was saying, the introduction of infection is huge when you're doing blood transfusion.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Sue. And the unless you have access to to the actual process of putting together the bags and putting together the fluids in the bags, you're going to most likely see the problem is that it's not that you're just going to give them an infection at the IV site. Is that if there is bacteria or some other bug in the blood that you're trying to transfer from one person to another, well, then you're basically injecting it directly into their bloodstream, and you're immediately giving that person septicemia, and that person can get sick very quickly and could easily die. And so for that reason, I haven't gone that far just yet. I think that I actually have been reading up a little bit on this, and I'm still trying to get through the sterility thing. The thing is that in survival medicine, you're really not in a sterile environment. You are, if you're lucky, in a clean environment. And then when we teach our suture classes and things like that, we tell people, well, it's unlikely you're going to be in a sterile environment, right, but we're going to try to make it as clean as possible and, drop the infection rate, 20% or so. And so that's the thing. But blood transfusions, that one is one that so far has escaped me in terms of anything that I could reliably tell you that, you're safe using. Now, does that mean that every person that you would try to transfer blood from one person to another, using primitive methods, is going to die? Not necessarily. And
well, you got the typing issue too. And
right.
having, and Sue, I know that Green Beret Deltas, they've got typing kits that they use in the field. But having been typed several times or attempted to be typed in the field by those guys, I can tell you they've never typed me in the field, not once ever, using their kit. Been able to get a good type off of it. So that's the other part of the problem. You got to get the right people with the right blood types together, and everybody should know. I guess you really should know yours.
And moving on from just getting the blood type is just having all the equipment. It's just like, do I have sterile IV equipment to be able to actually do an intravenous hydration, or did I use up all of that stuff? If you were prepared with that, you happen to be a medical person, and that's all gone, and now I have to go for the enema. So the same thing's going to happen with the blood transfusions. If you happen to be a person who can get a hold of that equipment, get a hold of the typing, get a hold of all the necessary equipment to do this in, the cleanest, sterilest available possible way, but you run out. I mean, most people are not going to have this. So yeah, you can do it with all your equipment, but when you don't have the equipment, what are we going to do? So that's where the book really stems from, is like, okay, we've run out of all the fancy stuff. Now what do we have?
Right. Basically, the book, if I had to encompass the entire book, it would be a saying in one sentence. It would be a saying from Teddy Roosevelt, and he said, "Do what you can with what you have, where you are."
Right. There you go,
guys. You know what? This one's been a very good show, and I want to have you guys again real soon. Because we didn't really even get to scratch the surface, and I think that this is
I know I have a whole list of medical stuff for people to get.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even really scratched the surface, and I would like to get in a little deeper. What I'll do is I'll get a hold of you guys and get a book, and I'll thumb through that and make some notes, and then we'll get you guys back on, because there's so much I want to talk about. Like, I know you guys give suture classes, but I'm a proponent of delayed closure and not suture, unless it's
we talk about that in our suture class.
Yes. Very emphasize that very much.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about, because I think a lot of people are dooming themselves to, I took a suture class and now it's the answer to all my questions, and it's really not. No. And then I also want to talk about dry goods and amounts that people should aim for to be storing, because no one ever has enough of that stuff.
I just want to say.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that when it comes to suturing, I can teach a monkey to throw a stitch. The important thing and the hardest thing to do is to impart the judgment as to when a wound should be closed, when a wound should be left open, when a wound should be secondarily closed. In other words, delayed closure, as you mentioned, or when a wound should be left open to heal in from below, for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Very important. Yeah, yes. we could talk about 100 different topics, so we can be on whenever you want.
I would love to, guys. I really would love to guys get you on again, and maybe we'll even maybe we could even do a Twitter space one time too together, because people can type their questions right in. You guys will see them, and we'll see them. We can answer them, and it's audio only format, so it's real easy. But I really like the reach of Twitter. It's audio only. Nobody will see it.
Hair in the ponytail.
Well, where can they get this awesome tome of medical knowledge, guys?
Well, I tried to type it in. For some reason, if I put in a URL, it didn't want to list it. So I kind of said the store for Doom and Bloom. But anyway, the educational site is doomandbloom.net, like you have there.
Yep.
I have a separate store, and that's where all of our hand-packed kits are. They are not packed until people order. I have nothing.
And they're fantastic, guys. They're good.
Nothing sitting on the shelf. You're not going to get an Amazon delivery the next day. We've got to pull all the supplies. I check all the expiration dates. We bag everything in waterproof bags that you can open and you can see through. And then we pack them in the kits and then we ship them off. So it takes a few days. It's not, Instacart delivery. But on the store.doomandbloom.net is the books. And so this is the first time I've ever done a spiral bound.
That's
and
awesome.
We also have, and this only, our spiral bound only comes in color. There is a seller on Amazon that's selling a spiral bound, but it's the black and white. I don't think they're very clear about that. They're on our product page. Nice people, but they're not clear that spiral is only black and white. The black and white is lower resolution than the file I gave them, because Amazon is cheap and they made cheap paper and cheap ink, and they're low resolution. My color is on 70-pound paper, and it is very high resolution. So all the graphics, all of the little tables, like that picture with the rectal hydration, rehydration, etc., is all very clear to see. We added over 250 more graphics, tables, things listed out. We took things that were in paragraphs and we brought it out into do this, 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 and this. So it's very easy to follow directions. So you don't have to pull things out of paragraphs. That was one of the things we're really focusing on. And we just spent so much time. Literally, this is a 15-year in the making book.
Yeah. Yeah, there's tons of knowledge. Because I had your first book. I had the old book from.
Oh, the black, with the black one. Yeah.
I have an idea, guys, for mountain readiness next year. I know you're not hitting the expo circuit, but I think you should come out and let's collaborate on a class. I would like to do a class, a very realistic class for people as an eye opener, for a lot of people to really get the understanding of what we're looking at. And but I want to talk offline because I don't want to give away what I want to do here with the students to really open their eye up, knock the fantasy out of this and ground it in reality, because the fantasy never lives up to the reality.
Right, it's all sexy and sensational until you're actually looking at it.
Yeah. So,
I know how to make good fake blood.
Good. We're gonna want it. And
I have a couple YouTube videos that I use some fake blood on.
We're going to use a lot, and there's going to be some more stuff involved. But not going to take the fantasy away from it. But yeah, we're going to get you guys back on. So you guys, Russ, put that link up again for the book. If you guys are interested in the book, go ahead and get it. Start going through it and making your notes. All right, start putting those Post-it notes around the fringes on the pages and your questions and things like that. And we'll do another one of these where we'll try to plan to have a little more time. Maybe we'll even do one on a weekend or something, so more people can sit there and we can take a little more time with this, because this is valuable information that people just don't have access to in a lot of cases. Doctors are too afraid to say, yeah, you could do rectal hydration. Absolutely. And we'll show you how to do it.
You're not going to find any.
No, they would never
You're not going to find
any
young doctor that's going to tell you that, because they're going to be afraid of losing their license.
Well, and that's just it.
Yeah. You can take
that was my idea for next year's mountain readiness. I want to volunteer Emery Morgenstern for he'll be the guy that we can do rectal rehydration on. I'll get a 55-gallon drum for that guy.
And put it on the roof. Put it on the roof.
Don't put whiskey in it.
He'll look like a fountain. He'll look like one of them little cherub fountains out there of water coming out of his mouth.
That's why you have to put a clamp on it and do it very, very slowly.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to do some more talking on this, because this is, as you can see, I don't know if you guys really been able to see all the comments and stuff, but there's a number of more questions in here we didn't get to, and stuff people have asked and said, and I think we can do more here, and I think we need to, if there's that much interest and that many questions.
And I want to reemphasize that even with my background being in special operations and everything, I was not a medic. Carl was a medic, and he wasn't the best medic. He was like, I'd say, "Hey, Carl, my knee hurts when I run." He's like, well, "Okay, stop running." Okay, all right. But
he's a wise man.
He's the common sense doctor. Stop doing that, or you'll be fine.
Yeah. No bedside manner from.
I say Carl's guys went to him when they couldn't not go. When they had to go, that was when they would go to Carl and be like, "Hey, man," because they all knew what they're going to get from him.
And if you ever want to do somebody to save you, or you got a gunshot wound, or you're beat up or blasted up, you always want one of those guys with you. But I'm very interested in the book, and even with all the experience I have, that's something I'm still very weak on, and it's perishable. It's perishable, like giving IVs, properly giving IVs or things like that. All this stuff is perishable. So having you guys back on here, I'm sure we'll get 1,000 questions that
and what we'll do
a lot of people need to answer, because it's a weak point.
I'm going to buy a copy too, and I want to pay for this one because I'm going to give it away on that show to somebody watching. I'll give a copy away, and I'll pay you guys for it. You can just ship it to whoever wins. So
we're happy to do that, and you don't have to pay for it.
We'll just give it.
No, I'll pay. Yeah, well,
we're happy to give it to you.
Free shit, guys. I'm not that dude.
Anyway,
but anyway.
So thank you guys so much for having us on. This is so much fun. I loved it.
We appreciate it.
We want to talk some more too. And I want some other guys. I want at least T in here on the next one because T's a good dude. And he'll have a ton of questions too. You guys will like him as you met him already.
We have.
But I want to have T in the house for our next one. So we'll get out. What do you got for him? What are you going to send him home with tonight?
Just again, this is the 7-point plan. This is the one that you really, really need to prepare for is your medical plan. Yeah. And whether it's a man-made disaster or a natural disaster, medicine is huge. And I really want to get that book also and just go over that you'd be surprised at how many people could have survived a natural disaster or some of those invasions that I've seen or some of these war zones if they just had the simple knowledge of simple things that could keep people going for a few weeks until they could get help or until things got better, or like the doctor said, even they get better and they never have to go to the doctor afterwards. That's the amazing part. So yeah. So everybody consider your medical plan.
Absolutely. And so guys, remember that for the next show, have your book and your enema bag. Joe, Amy, you guys, got anything you want to leave everybody with tonight?
If you want to check out our over 1,500 articles, podcasts, or videos, just check us out at doomandbloom.net. If you need quality medical kits, I know where you can find them at store.doomandbloom.net.
And we have a YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, we have a YouTube channel. It's called Dr. Bones
and Nurse
Dr. Bones, Nurse Amy.
Not a nurse, just Nurse Amy.
And you can friend us on Facebook. We have the Survival Medicine group. It's got about 8,000 people in it. And we have one last thing. Twitter, did I say Twitter?
No, we didn't say Twitter. At Prepper
Twitter
Show.
is at Prepper Show.
Well, it's not Twitter anymore. It's X.
At X.
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 Yes.
So.
Crazy Elon.
I'm an Elon Musk fan. I mean, he might destroy the world in the end, but I like the guy. So
awesome. He is fantastic. Right, I need him to buy all the social media.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will catch you next week. Joe and Amy, thanks for being here. Sue, we got to talk again shortly on that thing we talked about yesterday. It's got the juices flowing, so we'll talk. All right, guys. You guys know the drill. Be good at it. We will catch you next time. Hey, if you're in Atlanta, come to Blade Show this weekend. Got something to show you.